Admiral Kexthara stood in the center of the Zephyrian Council chamber, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams that floated in the air around him. The holographic displays showed star maps, energy readings, and intelligence reports from across their vast empire. For 3 full rotations of their homeworld, he had been studying the same information over and over again. The blue planet in the outer rim had always been there. The primitive creatures that lived on it called themselves humans. The Zephyrian. Scouts had visited their world many times over the past 50 cycles. Each report said the same thing. The humans were weak. They had just learned to travel between their own planets. Their technology was centuries behind Zephyrian science. Kexthara had read every file about the humans. They lived on only 1 world and 3 small colonies. Their ships moved slowly through space using chemical rockets. Their weapons were crude. Metal projectiles. They had no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no quantum computers. The humans were so far behind that the Zephyrian Empire had classified them as a non-threat species. The chamber doors burst open with a loud crash. Commander Valthus ran inside, his breathing heavy and his scales showing the bright red color of extreme alarm. In his hands, he carried a datapad that glowed with urgent priority signals. "Admiral," Valthus said, trying to catch his breath. "The long-range sensors have detected something impossible." Kexthara turned all 4 of his eyes toward the commander. "Explain." Valthus activated his datapad and projected the readings into the air. The hologram showed a massive object moving through space at incredible speed. The energy signature was unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. "This vessel appeared on our sensors 1 hour ago," Valthus said. "It is heading directly toward our space. The computer systems cannot identify its origin or construction type." Kexthara studied the readings carefully. The ship was enormous, larger than their biggest battle cruisers. Its energy output was off the scale. Most disturbing of all, it was moving faster than any known propulsion system could achieve. "Where did this ship come from?" Kexthara asked. "That is the impossible part, Admiral," Valthus replied. "The trajectory traces back to the human homeworld." Silence filled the chamber. Kexthara felt his heart beating faster as he processed this information. The humans could barely reach their own moon 3 cycles ago. Now they had built something that registered as a Class 7 threat level. "That cannot be correct," Kexthara said. "Run the analysis again." Valthus worked on his datapad for several minutes. When he finished, his scales turned even brighter red. "The analysis confirms it, Admiral. This is a human vessel. Somehow, they have constructed something that surpasses our most advanced technology." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the human dreadnought Un's Liberty cut through the darkness like a knife. The massive ship was 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that no alien species had ever seen. Its hull was made from materials that did not exist in any known database. Its engines bent space and time to achieve speeds that should have been impossible. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the stars through the main view screen. He was a tall man with brown hair and serious blue eyes. His uniform carried the insignia of the United Nations Space Command, and his face showed the determination of someone who had seen too much war. 3 months ago, Jake had been commanding a small patrol cruiser on the edge of human space. His job was boring but important, watching for threats that might endanger the human colonies. His younger brother Tom worked at the research station on Europa, studying alien technology that had been recovered from crash sites. Then the Zephyrians came. They attacked Europa without warning, using plasma weapons to destroy the research station and everything around it. 847 people died in the attack, including scientists, engineers, and security personnel. Including Tom. Jake closed his eyes and remembered the emergency transmission from Europa. Tom's voice had been calm even as the station burned around him. "Tell Mom and Dad I love them," Tom had said. "And Jake, don't let these aliens think we're weak. Show them what humans can really do." The transmission had ended in static and fire. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked at her station near the back of the bridge. She was a young woman with red hair and green eyes, and she was one of the best engineers in the human fleet. Her job was to monitor the Liberty's experimental quantum drives, the engines that made their impossible speed possible. "Captain," Amy said, looking up from her console, "we'll reach Zephyrian space in 30 minutes. All systems are running perfectly." Jake nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant. Are the weapon systems ready?" "Yes, sir," Amy replied. "The antimatter cannons are charged and standing by. The point defense systems are online. The quantum torpedoes are loaded and ready to fire." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women represented the best that humanity had to offer. They were scientists, soldiers, and explorers who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. For the past 50 years, humanity had been playing a careful game. They had allowed alien species to think that humans were primitive and weak. They had hidden their real technology behind fake chemical rockets and metal bullets. They had built secret shipyards in the outer solar system where no alien scout would think to look. The truth was that human science had advanced far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. While other species fought wars with plasma and particle beams, humans had learned to harness the power of antimatter. While aliens used computers made of crystals and metals, humans had built quantum processors that could think faster than biological brains. The human government had decided long ago that it was safer to appear weak than to reveal their true strength. They had watched the Zephyrians conquer 17 different species over the past century. They had seen how the aliens treated anyone they considered inferior. But the attack on Europa had changed everything. Jake's orders were clear and simple. He was to travel to the Zephyrian homeworld and demonstrate humanity's true capabilities. He was not to start a war, but he was to make sure that no alien would ever mistake human restraint for weakness again. "Lieutenant Foster," Jake said, "prepare to drop out of faster-than-light travel." Amy's fingers danced across her controls. "Quantum drives are powering down, Captain. We'll be in normal space in 60 seconds. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Kexthara watched his sensors as the impossible human ship approached their territory. His military advisors had gathered in the chamber, all of them staring at the readings with confusion and fear. "How is this possible?" asked General Nortak, the head of Zephyrian ground forces. "Our intelligence reports said the humans were decades away from interstellar travel." "Either our intelligence was wrong," Kexthara replied, "or the humans have been lying to us." The thought sent chills through the assembled officers. If humanity had been hiding their true technology, then every assumption about galactic power was wrong. The Zephyrian Empire had built its expansion on the belief that they possessed superior science and weapons. "Contact the Border Patrol," Kexthara ordered. "I want every available ship moved to intercept this vessel." "Admiral," Commander Valthus said quietly, "what if this is exactly what the humans want? What if they are trying to draw our forces into a trap?" Kexthara considered this possibility. But what choice did they have? If the humans had developed superior technology in secret, then the Zephyrian Empire was already in danger. They had to know what they were facing. The UN's Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Zephyrian space. The massive ship appeared on sensors across the Empire, its arrival sending shockwaves through every military command center. Jake Morrison looked at the alien homeworld on his view screen and felt the weight of history on his shoulders. This moment would change everything between humans and the rest of the galaxy. There would be no going back to the old game of pretending to be weak. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian government," Jake ordered. It's time they learned the truth about humanity. High Admiral Zarkith received the emergency alert while he was reviewing battle plans in his private chambers. The message was brief but urgent. An unknown vessel had entered Zephyrian space without permission. All available defense forces were ordered to respond immediately. Zarkith was the commander of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, a position he had earned through 40 years of military service. He had fought in 12 major battles and conquered 6 different worlds. His reputation as a tactical genius was known throughout the Empire. But as he read the sensor data about the human ship, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The vessel was massive, beyond anything in their databases. Its energy readings suggested weapons and shields that far exceeded Zephyrian technology. Most disturbing of all, it had appeared in their space without triggering any of their early warning systems. How had something so large moved so close to their homeworld without being detected? Zarkith activated his personal communicator and contacted the nearest patrol squadron. Fighter Squadron Epsilon was conducting routine exercises near the border. They were the closest military unit to the human ship. Squadron Leader Vextar, this is High Admiral Zarkith, he said into the device. You have new orders. Proceed immediately to intercept an unknown vessel that has entered our territory. The voice of Squadron Leader Vextar came through the communicator clearly. Understood, Admiral. What are our rules of engagement? Zarkith paused for a moment. Standard. Procedure was to destroy any ship that refused to leave Zephyrian space. But something about this situation felt different. The human vessel was clearly advanced, but it was alone. Why would any species send a single ship against the entire Zephyrian Empire? Begin with standard identification and withdrawal demands. Zarkith ordered. If the vessel refuses to comply, disable its engines and weapons. Do not destroy it unless you have no other choice. We need to understand what we are dealing with. 12 Zephyrian fighters changed course and accelerated toward the human dreadnought. Each fighter was equipped with plasma cannons and particle beam weapons. They were fast, maneuverable, and deadly. Squadron Leader Vextar had never lost a battle in 15 years of service. As the fighters approached the UN's Liberty, Vextar studied the alien ship through his cockpit displays. The vessel was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its hull was smooth and dark, with no visible weapon ports or engine exhausts. It moved through space with an eerie silence that made his scales crawl with nervousness. Unknown vessel. Vextar transmitted on standard communication frequencies. You have entered Zephyrian sovereign space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to withdraw. On the bridge of the UN's Liberty, Captain Jake. Morrison listened to the alien transmission with interest. The universal translator converted the Zephyrian language into English automatically. The tone was arrogant and demanding, exactly what he had expected from a species that thought humans were primitive. Chief Tactical Officer Carter, Jake said, to the man sitting at the weapons console, what do you make of those fighters? Ryan Carter was a veteran of the Titan Wars, where humans had fought against rebel colonies that tried to break away from Earth's government. He had studied alien technology for years and knew the capabilities of most galactic species. He examined the approaching Zephyrian ships through the Liberty's advanced sensors. They're armed with standard plasma weapons and particle beams. Ryan reported, impressive by galactic standards, but nothing we haven't seen before. Their shields are powered by fusion reactors. Their armor is made from crystallized metals. Honestly, Captain, they're about 50 years behind our current technology. Jake nodded. How long would it take to disable them without causing casualties? The point defense lasers could handle all 12 fighters in under 10 seconds, Ryan replied. We could target their weapon systems and engines with surgical precision. They wouldn't even know what hit them. Engineer Lisa Brooks worked at her station monitoring the ship's power systems. She was a small woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, but her understanding of quantum mechanics was better than most university professors. The Liberty's experimental power core was her responsibility, and she took that job very seriously. "Captain," Lisa said, "the Zephyrians are trying to scan our ship with their sensors. Should I activate our jamming systems?" Jake considered the question. The whole point of this mission was to demonstrate human capabilities. Hiding their technology would defeat that purpose. Let them scan us, Jake decided. I want them to see exactly what they're dealing with. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Kexthara watched the sensor readings with growing alarm. The human ship was not trying to hide its capabilities. The energy signatures were beyond anything in their experience. The hull materials did not match any known substances. The weapon systems showed power levels that should have been impossible to achieve. "This makes no sense," General Mortek said as he studied the data. "How could the humans develop such advanced technology without our knowledge?" "Perhaps they had help," suggested Science Advisor Kelmora. "Another species might have given them advanced technology in exchange for something." Admiral Kexthara shook his head. "No, look at the design patterns. This is clearly human engineering. They built this themselves." The implications were staggering. If humans could build one ship like this, they could build more. The entire balance of galactic power might be shifting before their eyes. Squadron Leader Vextar transmitted his surrender demands again, this time with more authority. "Human vessel, you are outnumbered 12 to 1. Surrender immediately, or we will open fire." Captain Morrison decided it was time to respond. He activated the ship's communication system and sent a message on all Zephyrian military frequencies. His words would be heard by every ship, station, and command center in their empire. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations Space Command vessel Liberty," he said in a calm, steady voice. "3 months ago, your forces attacked and destroyed a civilian research station in human space. 847 innocent people died in that unprovoked assault, including scientists, engineers, and my own brother." Jake paused to let his words sink in. Throughout Zephyrian space, military commanders listened with growing understanding of what was happening. "The attack on Europa was an act of war against humanity," Jake continued. "Your government has 30 minutes to provide an acceptable explanation for this aggression. If no satisfactory response is received, we will take appropriate action to ensure that such attacks never happen again." Squadron Leader Vextar laughed when he heard the human's message. One ship making demands against the entire Zephyrian Empire? The human captain must be insane or desperate. Vextar had destroyed larger ships with half his current force. "Human captain," Vextar replied, "you are clearly suffering from some form of mental illness. You cannot make demands on the Zephyrian Empire with a single vessel. Surrender now, and we might allow you to live." Jake Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The Zephyrian pilot's arrogance was exactly what he had expected. These aliens had spent so many years conquering weaker species that they could not imagine facing an opponent with superior technology. "Lieutenant Brooks," Jake said to his engineer, "please show our guests what human point defense systems can do." Lisa's fingers moved across her control panel with practiced precision. The Liberty's defensive grid came online, revealing dozens of laser emitters that had been hidden beneath the ship's hull plating. Each laser was powered by a miniaturized antimatter reactor and could target objects as small as a coin from thousands of kilometers away. The Zephyrian fighters were still laughing at the human captain's demands when the lasers fired. 12 precisely aimed beams struck 12 different targets in the span of 2 seconds. The plasma cannons on every fighter were sliced cleanly away from their mountings. The particle beam generators were severed from their power supplies. They. Engine nozzles were sealed shut with surgical precision. Not a single Zephyrian pilot was harmed. Their life support systems continued working perfectly. Their cockpit displays still functioned normally. But their ships were now completely helpless, floating in space like expensive pieces of debris. Squadron. Leader Vegstar stared at his instrument panel in shock. Every weapon system showed red warning lights. His engines were completely dead. His emergency power cells were the only thing keeping him alive in the vacuum of space. "What happened?" he whispered into his communicator. "How did they do that?" The other pilots in his squadron were asking the same question. In less than 10 seconds, the human ship had disabled an entire fighter wing without firing a single shot that their sensors could detect. The precision was impossible. The technology was beyond their understanding. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Kexthara watched the engagement through long-range sensors. The human ship had not moved from its position. No visible weapons had fired. Yet somehow, 12 of their best fighters were now floating helplessly in space. "Get me a full analysis of what just happened," Kexthara ordered his technical staff. "I want to know how they disabled our ships." The technicians worked frantically at their computers, trying to understand the sensor readings. Emperor Valandra sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Zephyrian capital city. The massive chamber around him was filled with holographic displays showing reports from across the empire. Military advisors, government officials, and science. Experts had gathered for an emergency meeting of the High Command. The Emperor was old, even by Zephyrian standards. He had ruled for 60 cycles, and had seen his empire grow from a single world to a dominion spanning 47 star systems. Under his leadership, the Zephyrians had conquered 17 different species and established themselves as the dominant power in their region of the galaxy. But now everything was changing. "Show me the reports again," Emperor Valandra commanded. Defense. Minister Koltara activated his datapad and projected the sensor readings into the air above the throne. The hologram showed the human ship and the disabled Zephyrian fighters floating helplessly around it. "The human vessel disabled our entire patrol squadron in less than 10 seconds, Koltara reported. "Our pilots are unharmed, but their ships are completely powerless. We have never seen weapons with this level of precision." Science advisor Kalmora stepped forward with her own analysis. "Emperor, the energy readings from the human ship indicate technology that is centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Their hull materials, propulsion system, and defensive grid all operate on principles we do not understand." Emperor Valandra studied the data carefully. His 4 eyes examined every detail of the sensor readings. The human ship was larger than anything in the Zephyrian fleet, but size alone did not explain its capabilities. The real shock was the level of advancement it represented. "How is this possible?" the Emperor asked. "Our intelligence reports said the humans were a primitive species barely capable of interplanetary travel." "Either our intelligence was completely wrong," replied Intelligence Director Nexal, "or the humans have been deliberately deceiving us about their true capabilities." The thought sent chills through the assembled officials. If humanity had been hiding their technology while studying Zephyrian weaknesses, then the Empire was in serious danger. Admiral Kexthara entered the chamber carrying urgent military dispatches. "Emperor, the human captain has broadcast a message demanding an explanation for our attack on their research station. He has given us 30 minutes to respond. What are our military options?" Emperor Valandra asked. Defense Minister Koltara consulted his tactical displays. "We can mobilize the entire home defense fleet. 200 warships are currently stationed in this system. If we coordinate a simultaneous attack from multiple directions, we might be able to overwhelm the human vessel through sheer numbers." "Do you really believe that will work?" the Emperor asked. Koltara hesitated before answering. Honestly, Emperor, I do not know. This human ship has already demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. But what choice do we have? We cannot allow a single alien vessel to make demands on the Zephyrian Empire. Emperor Valandra considered his options. Negotiating with the humans would show weakness and might encourage other species to challenge Zephyrian authority. But ordering an attack against such an advanced ship could result in disaster for his forces. Mobilize the fleet, he decided. But do not attack unless I give the direct order. First, we will see if overwhelming numbers cause the humans to reconsider. Their position. On the bridge of the UNS Liberty, Communications Officer Beth Palmer monitored Zephyrian military frequencies. She was a young woman with brown hair and hazel eyes who had graduated at the top of her class from the Space Command Academy. Her job was to track enemy communications and provide intelligence to the captain. Captain Morrison, Beth reported. I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout the system. The Zephyrians are mobilizing everything they have. Captain Jake Morrison nodded calmly. How many ships are we talking about, Lieutenant? Over 200 vessels, sir. Battle cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and support ships. They're moving to surround our position. Weapons Officer Chris Thompson looked up from his tactical display. He was a tall man with black hair and dark eyes who had served in the human military for 12 years. His specialty was advanced weapon systems, and he understood the Liberty's capabilities better than anyone except the engineers who had built them. Captain, Chris said, should I power up the main batteries? If they're planning to attack, we should be ready. Jake considered the situation. The approaching Zephyrian fleet represented the largest military force that humanity had ever faced in open combat. 200 alien warships against a single human dreadnought. The odds would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. But the UN's Liberty was not an ordinary warship. It represented 50 years of secret human technological development. Every system on the ship was designed to fight against enemies who possessed superior numbers but inferior technology. Not yet, Jake decided. Let them come. I want them to see exactly what they're dealing with before we demonstrate our offensive capabilities. Engineer Lisa Brooks monitored the ship's power systems as the Zephyrian fleet approached. The Liberties. Antimatter reactors were running at minimum output, providing power for life support, communications, and basic defensive systems. The main weapon batteries remained offline, waiting for orders to activate. Captain, Lisa reported, the Zephyrians are trying to scan our ship with deep penetration sensors. They're attempting to analyze our hull composition and internal structure. Let them look, Jake replied. The more they learn about our technology, the more likely they are to realize that fighting us would be a mistake. Back in the Zephyrian fleet, Admiral Zarkith coordinated the movement of his ships from the bridge of his flagship. The massive battlecruiser Dominator was the pride of the Zephyrian Navy, armed with plasma cannons that could crack planets and shielded by energy barriers that had never been penetrated. As his fleet moved into position around the human ship, Zarkith studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The Liberty showed no signs of fear or preparation for battle. It simply floated in space, allowing itself to be surrounded by overwhelming force. Admiral, reported his science officer, our detailed scans of the human ship have revealed some disturbing information. The hull appears to be constructed from materials that do not exist in our databases. The power readings suggest energy production levels that should be impossible to achieve. What about their weapons? Zarkith asked. That is the most concerning discovery, sir. We can detect massive weapon systems throughout the ship, but they are all powered down. The human captain is not even preparing to defend himself. Admiral Zarkith felt a chill run through his body. Either the human captain was insane, or he was so confident in his ship's abilities that he saw no threat from 200 Zephyrian warships. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian fleet. His voice was broadcast to every ship in the Armada, calm and professional, despite being outnumbered 200 to 1. Zephyrian forces, this is Captain Narration of the UNS Liberty. I can see that you have mobilized your entire home defense fleet in response to my presence. I want to make something very clear to all of you. I did not come here to start a war. I came here to deliver a message. The communication channel remained open as Jake continued his speech. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, military officers listened with growing unease. For 50 years, humanity has maintained a policy of peaceful observation regarding galactic affairs. We have watched other species develop and interact without interference. We have allowed you to believe that we are a primitive, weak civilization barely capable of interplanetary travel. Jake paused to let his words sink in. On dozens of Zephyrian ships, officers exchanged worried glances as they began to understand what the human captain was saying. The truth is that humanity has been deliberately concealing our technological capabilities. We have built advanced ships, developed powerful weapons, and established defensive networks throughout our territory. We have done this not to conquer or intimidate, but to protect ourselves and our allies from species that mistake restraint for weakness. Admiral Zarkith felt his heart beating faster as he listened to the human's words. If what the captain was saying was true, then everything the Zephyrian Empire believed about galactic power was wrong. Your attack on Europa crossed a line that humanity will not tolerate, Captain Morrison continued. You killed 847 innocent civilians, including scientists and researchers who posed no threat to anyone. This act of unprovoked aggression has forced us to reveal capabilities we preferred to keep secret. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Valandra listened to the human captain's speech with growing alarm. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed advanced technology and had been hiding it, then they might have been studying Zephyrian weaknesses for decades. Your fleet is impressive, Jake admitted, looking at the 200 ships surrounding his vessel. But before you decide to attack, I want to demonstrate what you would be fighting against. Jake turned to his weapons officer. Commander Thompson, please prepare the main battery for a demonstration shot. Target the uninhabited moon in the outer system. Chris Thompson's fingers moved across his control panel with practiced precision. Deep within the Liberty's hull, complete silence filled the Zephyrian fleet communication channels. 200 warships floated motionless in space, their crews staring at empty displays where a moon had existed just moments before. The expanding cloud of superheated gas was the only evidence that anything had ever been there. Admiral Zarkith sat in his command chair aboard the battlecruiser Dominator, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The numbers made no sense. The energy required to completely vaporize a moon should have been impossible for any single weapon to produce. Yet the human ship had done exactly that with what appeared to be minimal effort. Science Officer Helver, Zarkith said quietly, analyzed the energy readings from the human weapon discharge. The science officer worked at his console for several minutes, running calculations and comparing data. When he finished, his scales had turned pale with fear. Admiral, Helva reported, the energy output from that single shot exceeded the total power generation capacity of our entire fleet. The weapon the humans used operates on principles we do not understand. Zarkith felt his heart sink. His fleet represented the most powerful military force the Zephyrian Empire could assemble. If all of his ships combined could not match the output of one human weapon, then any battle would be hopeless. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Valandra stood before the massive view screen in his throne room. The image showed the space where the moon had been, now empty except for glowing particles of debris. His advisors whispered among themselves, their voices filled with shock and disbelief. How many weapons like that does the human ship possess? The Emperor asked. Science advisor Kalmora consulted her data pad before answering. Our scans detected at least 12 similar energy signatures throughout the human vessel. They appear to have multiple weapons of equivalent power. The implications were staggering. If the humans had 12 weapons that could destroy moons, they possessed enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. The Zephyrian Empire's military advantage had vanished in a single demonstration. Defense Minister Koltara approached the throne with obvious reluctance. Emperor, what are your orders for the fleet? Should Admiral Zarkith attempt to engage the human ship? Emperor Velandra considered the question carefully. His empire had been built on military strength and the fear it inspired in other species. But fear was a weapon that worked in both directions. The humans had just demonstrated that they possessed power beyond Zephyrian comprehension. No, the Emperor decided. Order all ships to maintain their positions, but take no hostile action. I want to hear what this human captain has to say. Captain. Jake Morrison studied the tactical display on the bridge of the UNS Liberty. The Zephyrian fleet had stopped moving after his demonstration. Their weapons remained powered down, and their ships held position at a respectful distance. The message had been received clearly. Open a direct communication channel to the Emperors. Flagship, Jake ordered. Communications officer Beth Palmer worked at her console to establish the connection. Channel open, Captain. You're speaking directly to Emperor Velandra. Jake straightened his uniform and faced the main view screen. When the Zephyrian Emperor appeared on the display, Jake could see the fear and uncertainty in the alien's 4 eyes. Emperor Velandra, Jake began, I hope my demonstration has clarified the situation we find ourselves in. Humanity does not wish to destroy your empire or conquer your worlds. We seek only assurance that attacks on human civilians will never occur again. The Emperor's image flickered slightly as the communication signal crossed the vast distance between ship and planet. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had ruled for decades, but now faced a reality he did not understand. Captain. Morrison, Emperor Velandra replied, your technological capabilities are clearly superior to our own. But I must know, how many ships like yours does humanity possess? Jake had expected this question. The answer would determine whether the Zephyrians accepted peaceful coexistence or attempted to develop countermeasures against human technology. The UN's Liberty is one of 37 dreadnoughts currently in service with the United Nations Space Command. Jake answered truthfully. We have been building advanced vessels for 50 years, while allowing other species to believe we were primitive. The Emperor's scales changed color as he processed this information. 37 ships with moon-destroying weapons represented enough military power to conquer half the galaxy. Why did you hide your true capabilities? The Emperor asked. Jake activated a holographic projector that displayed star charts and historical data. The images showed Zephyrian territorial expansion over the past century, including the 17 species they had conquered. We watched your empire grow through military conquest, Jake explained. We observed how you treated species you considered inferior. Humanity chose to appear weak rather than provoke a conflict we hoped to avoid. Science advisor Dr. Kevin Walsh stepped forward on the Liberty's bridge. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and deep knowledge of galactic history. His job was to provide context for diplomatic negotiations. Emperor, Dr. Walsh said, humanity has developed technology that surpasses anything currently known in this galaxy. We have faster-than-light communications, planetary defense networks, and manufacturing capabilities that could produce thousands of warships if necessary. The doctor activated additional displays showing human achievements. Fusion reactors, the size of buildings, quantum computers that could simulate entire star systems, and manufacturing facilities hidden in asteroid fields throughout human space. But we have also developed something your empire seems to lack, Dr. Walsh continued. We have learned to value cooperation over conquest. Humanity offers protection to peaceful species and restraint toward former enemies who choose to change their ways. Emperor Valandra studied the technical data with growing amazement. The humans had built an entire hidden civilization while appearing to be barely capable of interplanetary travel. Their deception had been complete and their planning extensive. What do you want from the Zephyrian Empire? The Emperor asked. Captain Morrison deactivated the technical displays and focused on the Emperor's image. We want 3 things. First, an immediate end to territorial expansion through military conquest. Second, reparations for the families of those killed in the attack on Europa. Third, the establishment of diplomatic relations between our species based on mutual respect rather than fear. The Emperor's advisors whispered among themselves as they considered the human demands. The terms were surprisingly reasonable given humanity's overwhelming technological advantage. And if we refuse? Emperor Valandra asked. Jake's expression remained calm, but his voice carried unmistakable resolve. Then humanity will take whatever action is necessary to protect innocent lives throughout this region of space. We prefer cooperation, but we will not tolerate aggression against defenseless populations. Navigator Helen Price worked at her station near the back of the Liberty's Bridge. She was a young woman with black hair and brown eyes who specialized in faster-than-light navigation systems. Her console showed star charts and jump coordinates for locations throughout Zephyrian space. Captain, Helen reported, I'm detecting movement from several Zephyrian military bases throughout their territory. It appears they're mobilizing additional forces. Jake nodded calmly. He had expected this response. Even facing superior technology, military commanders would want to explore all possible options before accepting defeat. Emperor, Jake said, I believe your military advisors are preparing contingency plans. Before you commit to any course of action, allow me to demonstrate one more aspect of human capabilities. Jake turned to his navigator. Lieutenant Price, please execute Navigation Protocol 7. Helen's fingers danced across her control panel. With practiced precision, the Liberty's quantum drives activated, bending space and time around the massive ship. In an instant, the dreadnought vanished from its position near the Zephyrian homeworld. Admiral Zarkith watched his sensors in disbelief as the human ship simply disappeared. One moment it was there, surrounded by his fleet. The next moment it was gone, leaving no trace of its passage. Where did it go? Zarkith demanded of his science officer. Before Helver could answer, new reports flooded in from across the Zephyrian Empire. The human ship had appeared simultaneously at 12 different locations throughout their territory. Military bases, shipyards, and defensive installations all reported the same impossible sight dot at each location. The UN's Liberty remained visible for exactly 60 seconds, long enough for detailed scans of every military facility and defensive position, long enough to demonstrate that humanity could strike anywhere in Zephyrian space at will. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the Liberty returned to its original position near the homeworld. The entire demonstration had taken less than 5 minutes, but the message was unmistakably clear. As you can see, Captain Morrison said to the Emperor, distance is not a factor in human military planning. We can reach any target in your empire instantly and without warning. Your defenses cannot stop us because we can appear anywhere we choose. Emperor Valandra stared at the human captain with a mixture of fear and respect. In a matter of hours, 3 weeks had passed since the UNA's Liberty departed from Zephyrian space. The massive human dreadnought had vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by its brief visit. News of humanity's technological revelations spread through space like wildfire, carried by traders, diplomats, and military communications. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Valandra stood in his private chambers reviewing the Treaty of Terra Nova. The document represented the most significant diplomatic agreement in galactic history. By signing it, the Zephyrian Empire had officially recognized humanity as the dominant, peacekeeping force in their sector of space. The treaty's terms were clear and comprehensive. The Zephyrians would immediately cease all territorial expansion. Through military conquest, they would pay substantial reparations to the families of those killed on Europa. Most importantly, they would accept human oversight of any future conflicts involving member species. The payments to the human families have been completed, reported Finance Minister Cole Fick. 100 million credits transferred to the United Nations Compensation Fund. Emperor Valandra nodded slowly. The money meant nothing compared to the lives lost, but it was a gesture of acknowledgement for the wrong that had been done. What about our military forces? The Emperor asked. Defense Minister Cole Tara consulted his datapad before responding. All expansion fleets have been recalled to defensive positions. Our territorial borders are now fixed at their current locations. The conquest of the Moralian system has been cancelled, and we have withdrawn our forces. The Emperor felt the weight of these changes deeply. For a century, the Zephyrian Empire had grown through military strength and the fear it inspired. Now, they were learning to exist within fixed boundaries, protected by treaties rather than superior firepower. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the halls of United Nations Space Command headquarters. He had returned home as a hero, but the title felt strange to him. The mission to Zephyrian space had been necessary, but it had also ended humanity's long period of peaceful obscurity. Admiral Patricia Wells, the head of Space Command, met Jake in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She was a veteran officer who had overseen humanity's secret military expansion for 2 decades. "Congratulations, Captain," Admiral Wells said as Jake entered the room. "Your mission has fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power." Jake took a seat across from the Admiral's desk. "Thank you, Mom. But I hope you understand that there's no going back now. Every species in the galaxy knows what humanity is capable of." Admiral Wells activated a holographic display showing star charts and intelligence reports. 7 species have already requested formal alliance agreements with humanity. The Alterian Federation, the Corvan Republic, and 5 smaller civilizations want our protection against aggressive neighbors. Jake studied the data with interest. The Alterians were a peaceful species known for their scientific achievements. The Corvans were traders who had been repeatedly attacked by pirates and raiders. All 7 species had one thing in common. They were defenseless against military aggressors. "What about hostile reactions?" Jake asked. "Intelligence reports indicate that at least 12 species are attempting to develop countermeasures against human technology," Admiral Wells replied. "The Krex Empire has tripled their military spending. The Vorthan Collective is researching quantum defense systems. Several smaller powers are forming alliances specifically to counter human influence." Jake had expected this response. Throughout galactic history, the revelation of superior technology had always triggered arms races and alliance shifts. The difference was that this time, the technological gap was so vast that conventional countermeasures would be ineffective. "Do any of these developments concern you?" Jake asked. Admiral Wells smiled grimly. "Captain, we've been planning for this scenario for 50 years. Our technology is not just advanced, it's designed to remain superior even if other species attempt to copy it. By the time they understand our current capabilities, we'll have moved on to even more advanced systems." 3,000 light-years away, on the bridge of the Unna's Guardian, Captain Dan Roberts reviewed his new orders. Dan had been Jake Morrison's roommate at the Space Command Academy 15 years earlier. Now he commanded the 2nd Dreadnought. To be revealed to the galaxy that the Guardian was identical to the Liberty in most respects, but it carried specialized equipment for long-range patrol missions. Dan's assignment was to establish humanity's visible presence in the outer rim territories where piracy and slavery were common problems. Navigation Officer Brown, Dan said to the young woman at the helm station, set course for the Alterian. System, we're going to make some new friends. Lieutenant Susan Brown was fresh out of the academy and excited to be serving aboard one of humanity's most advanced ships. Course plotted and ready. Captain. Quantum drive standing by. Execute. Dan ordered. The Guardian vanished from Earth orbit and reappeared near the Alterian homeworld in less than 10 seconds. The peaceful aliens had been expecting humanity's arrival, but seeing a human dreadnought materialize in their space was still an impressive sight. Prime Minister Kaelan on the Alterian Federation transmitted a welcome message to the human ship. Captain Roberts, the Alterian people are honored by your presence. We have prepared a formal alliance proposal for your consideration. Dan smiled as he reviewed the Alterian proposal. Unlike the Zephyrians, these aliens understood the value of cooperation over conquest. Prime Minister, humanity is pleased to accept your alliance. Together, we will ensure that peaceful species can develop without fear of aggression. Back on Earth, Intelligence Officer Maria Santos compiled reports from across the galaxy. She worked in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, analyzing communications intercepts and diplomatic intelligence from dozens of species. The picture that emerged was both encouraging and concerning. Peaceful civilizations were eager to align themselves with humanity, seeking protection from more aggressive neighbors. Military powers were scrambling to understand human technology and develop defensive strategies. But there were also signs of hope. Several species that had previously relied on conquest were reconsidering their policies. The thermal hegemony had suspended their invasion of the crystalline territories. The Plasma Consortium had entered negotiations with former enemies rather than continuing their expansion wars. Fear of human intervention is changing behavior patterns throughout this region of space, Maria reported to Admiral Wells during their weekly briefing. Species that previously solved disputes through warfare are now seeking diplomatic solutions. This was exactly what humanity had hoped to achieve. Not domination through fear, but peace through the credible threat of overwhelming retaliation against aggressors. 6 months after the Treaty of Terra Nova was signed, the first test of humanity's new role arrived. The Krex Empire, a militaristic civilization known for enslaving conquered populations, launched a massive invasion of the peaceful Alterian colonies. The Krex had studied human technology and believed they had developed effective countermeasures. Their new quantum shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. Their improved armor could withstand conventional explosives. Their strategic planning assumed that humanity would be reluctant to intervene in distant conflicts. They were wrong on all counts. Captain Dan Roberts received the distress call from the Alterian colonies while the Guardian was patrolling the outer rim. Krex invasion fleets had overwhelmed the colonists' minimal defenses and were beginning the process of enslaving the population. How many Krex ships are involved in the invasion? Dan asked his tactical officer. Approximately 400 vessels, Captain, replied Lieutenant Mark Taylor. Battleships, cruisers, and troop transports. They've committed a significant portion of their total fleet. Dan considered his options. 400 ships against. One represented overwhelming odds by traditional standards. But the Guardian was not a traditional warship. Contact the other dreadnoughts in this sector, Dan ordered. I want the UNS Defender and UNS Vigilant to join us immediately. Within an hour, 3 human dreadnoughts had assembled near the Alterian colonies. The Krex invasion fleet found themselves facing opponents they had not expected to encounter. Admiral Vexcron of the Krex Empire studied the human ships through his command center displays. 3 vessels against 400 should have been laughable odds. But intelligence reports about human capabilities made him cautious. "Deploy quantum shields and prepare evasive maneuvers," Vexcron ordered. "If the humans attack, we'll test whether their weapons can penetrate our new defenses." Captain Roberts opened a communication channel to the Krex fleet. "Admiral Vexcron, you are in violation of the Terran Protection Accords. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." Vexcron laughed at the human demand. "Captain Roberts, your 3 ships are outnumbered more than 100 to 1. Surrender now, and we might allow you to retreat with your lives." Dan turned to his weapons officer. "Commander Peterson, please demonstrate why numbers don't matter when you have superior technology." The 3 human dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously. Their antimatter cannons cut through Krex quantum shields like paper.